I don't think that you accommodate the faith in a way like by debasing it will make it easier for them to enter in. No, it's like turn it up to 11.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what people want is the real deal, but we have to be able to help them in acknowledging the genuine roadblocks, like the real obstacles, which are the obstacles posed by our own sinfulness and viciousness. But like, hey, this, I don't say that in judgment. I say in terms of like, let's facilitate, let's make it possible.
Okay, hey, welcome to this episode of the Catholic Man Show. It's great to have you guys back. Father Gregory Pine, we have Father Patrick Briscoe, and we have Father Joseph Anthony. Here's the deal, Father Joseph Anthony. How did you get to have two First Awesome names?
I asked for 12, and they said drop it down to 2. So that's how I ended up there.
Art of the deal, right there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, I wanted Joseph. That was my goal. I wanted to have Joseph. And when we entered, our novice master had told us, if you want to keep your baptismal name, that's fine. If you want to take a religious name, that's great. Suggest 3, and then he would pick 1.
Oh, obedience.
I went into the meeting as a cocky young college student, and I said, well, here's the one name. Is Joseph. I was like, he's big in my life. He's made took away a lot of hurdles to me entering the order. So obviously, he's going to be the one for me. And novice master looked at me and said, "No, there's too many damn Josephs in this province. Pick another name." And so I was quick on my feet, and I said, "What if I took a 2 name, did a double name?"
Joseph.
Said keep it to 5 syllables or less. And I was like, okay. So I ended up with Joseph Anthony that way.
Very Southern.
Yeah.
2 first names?
2 first name.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, welcome to Tulsa. It's your first time here as well?
Yeah, I've been to Oklahoma once before.
Okay.
I was in Oklahoma City, but this is my first time in Tulsa. So I loved Oklahoma City. It was a great time. So
Tulsa's even better.
Hopefully
Yeah.
Tulsa lives up
Yeah.
to that and maybe even exceeds it.
We
We'll
actually
see.
sent all of the B group of priests to Oklahoma City.
Including
Yeah.
one that became a saint.
And you know what? They love him.
Well, he actually
Well,
was,
see-
he actually was here too. And it's actually one diocese at the time. So.
Okay. all
In
right.
Oklahoma City, they have the Blessed Stanley Rother Shrine. In Tulsa, they have the Saint Stanley Rother Shrine.
In Oklahoma City, isn't that where they have the Catholic Woman show?
Exactly.
That's
It's
the
doing
Oklahoma
a-
City Thunder that you're thinking.
Oh,
Dang, hits hard. Nice.
But it's great to have Father Patrick. It's great to have you back. Great to have you back as well, Father Gregory.
Hey, delighted.
I almost wanted to call you just Father Pine because I did see a video recently. You were like, "Listen, people call me Father Pine. I don't like to be called Father Pine, but I guess I'm just gonna have to deal with this."
Yeah.
So I almost did that to you, just
Hey,
just for your
you
sanctification.
did by way of narration. So
yeah, that's right.
exactly.
So how did you pick the name Pine?
it was a toss-up between cone or tree. Conifer was a little long.
I thought that Pine was Irish for a while, and then I was at one of these Irish bars where they have the map of Ireland with all of the last names by county, and I was like, let me show you that I'm from the County Cork. And then it wasn't there, and I came to discover that it's actually English. So having thought myself part of the oppressed for so long, I came to discover that I was in fact the oppressor, which was earth-shattering.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's it like on top?
I mean, it's tough. I make land acknowledgments now every time I start a podcast.
So you guys are going to be talking about. Tell me how you came up with Our Lady's Lasso as the title for the conference tomorrow.
So it was. I have like you go to church and you have a bunch of Irish grandmothers, because
Yes.
if you're a man beneath the age or under the age of 81 and you're not there with a woman and children, they're like, you're going to be a priest. So you get a lot of grandmothers out of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
We had a family grandmother adopted named Anne Byrne, and she had some cool ways to refer to things of the faith. So when she thought that the evil one was overplaying his hand or was too active, she would say, "Old pointy tails on roller skates these days."
Old pointy tails on roller skates.
Exactly,
God,
yeah.
wow.
So Satan was, he's very active. That's what that signified. But with respect to the Rosary, in describing its intercessory power, she's like, just got to grab Our Lady's lasso there. So once you got snagged, as it were, by Our Lady's lasso, you were done. So like her intercession was kind of a violent sort, like a hog-tying sort. So that was in the back of my mind. And then I read a documentary. I watched a documentary recently called Twisters, which
that's actually
With an S or without an S?
I don't remember. It was the more recent documentary.
Yes, yeah.
the 95 documentary is really good.
Okay, yeah. So both great classics of documentary style. And it brought to mind the fact that sometimes lasts are deployed in the state. So I figured,
Connected them.
yeah, exactly.
Nice,
Yeah.
nice. Okay, so what is the Rosary? Where did it come from? We're here with 3 Dominicans. That's like your thing. So where did it come from?
Well, one of the things we know about St. Dominic was that he had a great devotion to the Virgin Mary. His early biographers attest that one of the great hymns that he loved was Ave Maris Stella, among other things. The order is one of the first orders to make profession to the Virgin Mary in our profession formula. So we got these hard facts on our side. We added the singing of the Salve Regina at the end of our compline, at the end of our night prayers.
Because one of the guys was possessed. And we're
Yeah,
like, this can't happen.
there was like a little demon action. It was making everyone a bit nervous in the dormitory.
It was rollerblades, not roller skates.
Wait. Who was possessed?
One of the brothers.
One of the brothers.
Like you're
like tormented by demons.
like
early-
from a
early
long
days.
time ago.
yeah, 13th
yeah,
century.
yeah.
Yeah.
For a second,
In their class.
I thought you meant there's like somebody.
We have some theories. They're no longer with us. Yeah. But they were.
Okay,
So
yeah.
this is detailed in the lives of the brethren, and what calmed the boys down at night and sent the powers of evil awry, sent them out, booted them real good, was the sprinkling of the brothers with the holy water and the singing of the Salve Regina. So we have these Marian devotions that are part and parcel to us. But then the Rosary is associated with St. Dominic because of his success in preaching some form of it against heretics in the south of France. So sometimes you have an idea that may or may not be a good idea. You could like buy a radio station with your best friend from college on a whim one night. For example, might be a good idea, might not.
May not be a good idea.
But you get an idea, you do it, So Dominic's down there trying to preach to these guys, and he's not having a lot of success until he starts preaching something like the Mysteries of the Rosary, an early form of it. So that's more or less our tradition of early successful preaching, calling on the Virgin Mary. We've had these experiences within the inner life of the brethren, and then Dominic's apostolic success in preaching some form of the Rosary.
Nice. So did he give the Rosary the structure more or less that we have today? Did it exist?
We'll take
Was there
credit
like
for that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
That's what people say.
people say.
Let's
It's got to be
St.
true.
Thomas, because
There's
you
no
can look
Franciscans here,
you can
so
look
the
into-
answer is yes.
Yeah, they're wrong. We
Right.
know that. We can start with that. They're wearing brown. Look at them. What can brown do for you? Lose your package. No. So the early Dominicans, when they preached the Rosary, connected it to the mysteries of the life of Christ, the mysteries that we associate with our meditation. And it's a way of forming and directing the mind in contemplative prayer that lay people hadn't been given. So you can read all kinds of historical accounts of the development of the Rosary, the repetition of Paternosters and of Aves, and those all have important truth behind them in the development of the prayer. The prayer didn't come from nowhere, but the part that's typically attributed to St. Dominic was assigning mysteries for contemplation in preaching them to people, namely heretics, and converting them.
Successfully.
Successfully.
Yeah, which is great. Okay, so
Like the radio station, it worked out.
Yeah.
It worked out, yeah.
And then he got a second one.
Which is pretty awesome because it's like hooking up. Like we just opened a new radio station in McAllister.
Really?
And it reaches the penitentiary, which is
That's
like what
awesome.
we've been trying to
Yeah.
do for.
There's a
years.
maximum security facility down there.
Sweet.
And they have a lot of time.
They
And
do.
it's like there's all this red tape if you want to go in and minister to the prisoners. We just skipped all that.
Yeah. That's like the same thing for us. Is like if we want to minister in another diocese, we have to like send letters of good standing, and then like have our blood type checked, and then we also have to get branded, and then we also have to apologize for being priests. It's wild. But you can just record a podcast and then everyone gets it.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not very good at thinking of two things at one time. I'm terrible at it,
Okay.
actually. And so in the Rosary, like you talk about, like we're saying specific prayers, but we're also contemplating on the life of Christ. It's very hard for me to consider, like, how do I reconcile the two things of saying one thing but thinking about another?
Yeah. Father Joseph Anthony is actually the promoter of the Rosary for our
true.
province. So
Well, I think
Nice.
when you come into the Rosary, when part of the genius of how St. Dominic began to preach it, but also connected to the Contemplation of the Mysteries, which is just like cracking open a beer. It's going to be that thing that your exterior actions are going to be able to create the disposition for an interior reality. So as you're reciting these prayers, right, in a very physical way, you're using your physical voice and doing this, it's actually setting the tone for a meditation to happen, in contemplation to happen, in an interior union with the Lord by focusing on the mysteries. So instead of constantly being distracted by noises, sounds, exterior notifications, or kids crying or whatever it is, I'm actually creating a physical environment with my voice that is setting the tone for an action, for an interior action. So by the repetition, it is kind of like so many people think that it's just a task-oriented activity. I say my 10, I move on to the next, and then I completed my 50 prayers. But it's more about the repetition is going to be creating this environment in an exterior way for an interior union with the Lord by focusing on those mysteries. So it's not that you're just kind of setting like, a hum for the meditation, hum or thing, but it's actually allowing ourselves to unite the reality of our humanity in body and soul by the physical action of kind of setting this very divine prayer, a divine exterior, because we're using the words of Scripture and how the angels or how the angel approached the Blessed Mother in that prayer to create a divine kind of environment for the meditation of the Divine Son.
So we talk about the virtue of religion is the virtue of worship, the virtue whereby you refer your life to God, who is the source and end thereof. And the idea is that like the soul of religion is prayer, which is the raising of the mind, and devotion, which is the giving of the heart. And then all of these exterior things are in service of prayer and devotion. But prayer and devotion also spill over into the exterior things, like the postures that you assume, the words that you say, and stuff like that. And St. Thomas will say, like, what is it that makes worship worthy, or what is it that makes worship good? And he'll say, well, you start with intention, like I want to give you this gift. And then you work on attention, and you go through the words to the senses and ultimately to God. And so the idea of the words is that it would direct you to the mysteries, which are the sense of the words, because you have the angelic salutation, the words exchanged between Mary and Elizabeth, and then the last part of the prayer was added in the 15th century by Blessed Alan de la Roche. But the idea is that it's a gospel meditation, the Hail Mary, and then the other prayers besides. So through the words to the senses, to the mysteries themselves, into which mysteries they kind of place you, and then ultimately to God. But he says if you're going to focus on one or the other or the next, the best obviously is to focus on God. So the point is, Lord, I give you my prayer and I look for you in the midst of it. The words help me to focus on the mysteries, which ultimately conduct me to you.
So when I pray the Rosary, and I know I'm not alone, distraction is just rampant. I mean,
It is chaotic in your mind.
It's like,
yeah.
Sometimes I'll finish and say, like, did I just pray the Rosary? Like, I know I've reached the
Run
end
out
of
of
these
beads.
beads in my hand, but
I'm Ron
Right.
Burgundy.
I'm not sure what to do with my hands.
Ricky, put your hands down. Come on.
part of it is that it's so familiar, right?
Yeah.
That I do it. I try to do it every day.
Yeah.
What can I do
Mm-hmm.
to fight against this distraction from? Because I want to pray it well, so I have the intention that.
Which is the beginning,
I desire
right?
to pray
Yeah.
it well.
Exactly.
I think it's a little counterintuitive, but my typical suggestion and advice in that situation, whether you're dealing with distractions in prayer, no matter what kind of prayer they are, whether it's a holy hour, mass, the rosary, reading scripture, if you're going to get distracted, the reality is we all get distracted because we are frail human beings. We have a fallen human nature. That's going to happen, so don't get surprised by that. You're not a horrible person. You're just a fallen person. My advice to that is somewhat counterintuitive, is do not fight it. So claim it for what it is, because I think when we fight it, we tense up and say, no, I need to focus. And the more you focus on things, the more you're going to force yourself to get distracted on it, right? So if I tell you not to think of a pink elephant, what did you think of? Pink elephant. If I tell you,
No, I was thinking of pancakes.
yeah, well,
But to be fair,
Random.
he thinks about pancakes a lot.
yeah, thank you. But it's one of those things that if you force yourself, don't be distracted, focus, you're just only going to encourage yourself to be more distracted. So I think the counterintuitive thing is to not fight it, but what you do is claim the distraction for what it is. If it's the rambunctious 5-year-old in a pew in front of you, or if it is, the bacon cheeseburger you want on Friday of Lent, just claim that and surrender it to the hands of the Lord. Lord, I give you this distraction. Right? And if we can cultivate that kind of response to these small distractions of our life, cultivate this kind of disposition to our distractions to just continually hand over the small things to the Lord, then when bigger distractions come up or bigger temptations come up on the Lord, we've already kind of flexed that muscle to know how to turn over into the hands of the Lord these small things. And in that way, our distractions, which goal of the distraction is to take us away from God in prayer, the distraction now becomes prayer, right? Because I'm speaking to the Lord, I'm handing it over, I'm making a surrender of that distraction. So now that's a prayerful act, and it becomes part of my prayer. And so naming the distraction for what it is, and then just surrendering it to the Lord, and then move on and go back to the action. Don't be afraid of that, right? So I think we can kind of get ourselves to a point where we're so worked up on these distractions that my prayer isn't pure enough because I haven't focused hard enough on it and pure enough. No, we're human beings. We're frail. We're going to get distracted. So to allow ourselves that ability and to actually pray in our humanity and not into some weird perception of what we think holiness looks like.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because I think there's a temptation also to measure the quality of my prayer by did I get, I wasn't distracted, as if that's the goal of prayer. And that's a distraction in and of itself.
Can be.
To take the object of prayer away from God and to my own ability to perform or something. Yeah.
Father Joseph Anthony's really good at reminding us that we're not angels. We might be tempted to be, but you get little rumbly tums, you get, that cigar scratch, you know you've got a body.
Yeah.
You are not an angel. Angels don't get distracted, but we get distracted because of how we learn. My mom told me when we were kids that distractions that enter our prayer are often things we should be praying about. And I like this suggestion too, that sometimes what we think is a distraction because of how we've ordered ourselves or how we've set our will could be an inspiration for the Holy Spirit, something that we need to pray about. So Father Joseph Anthony's beautiful answer focused on surrender, and I would just like to add that sometimes people think intercession is kind of dirty prayer. It's like, if I'm just making a petition to God or asking for His intercession on something, it's not been the highest form of prayer. But it's not. It's actually very important and a critical aspect of prayer. So not to be tempted to think of that kind of prayer as less.
And I think there was a phrase, I forget who it was, one of the spiritual
Thomas Aquinas?
No, not him.
Oh, okay.
Spiritual writer.
Father Gregory Pine. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go.
The good old goo. But he said the best prayer is the one you show up to. So the one that
Father Gregory says that.
Yeah, it's not necessarily about the quality of was I so purely attentive or did I get too distracted. It's no, you showed up to it and you did it. Do not underestimate the graces of prayer that is faithfully done. Even if it's not at the highest quality, maybe you fall asleep in it or whatever. It would, yes, in all things considered, it would be better not to fall asleep in prayer. But don't let that distract you from not doing it. And so if you get to the end of your beads and you're like, I don't even know what just happened. What mysteries did I just pray? You can pray it again, but don't underestimate the fact that you did do that. You did pray. And prayer that is faithfully done wins tremendous amount of graces.
Yeah, so you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good in some aspects, especially with family life, right? Because there's I would like to say we pray the family rosary every day, and then I have to hold my son down from levitating, and while we're in the process of it, and we're all walking through glass as we pray the sorrowful mysteries. But that's just not the case, right? There's
weird family.
I know. It's I know.
I was praying a family rosary with a family last summer. We were 2 Hail Marys in, I kid you not. and I look over, and the 2-year-old girl is naked and dancing on the coffee table.
Well, there are many times in which I feel like
I might have to report this.
you don't understand the paperwork you just made me do.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there's many times in the family life where you feel like that you're not actually doing a spiritual workout in any way, shape, or form, but you're doing more of just a physical workout, making sure they're not hitting each other, making sure that we're not using rosary beads as a real weapon, like physical weapon. And so, like, there are times in which it's like, well, the best time I can actually pray the rosary with my kids is driving to school. And it's like, it's either that or nothing.
Because they're restrained.
Because they can't go anywhere.
Right.
They're in a seatbelt. Like, they can't go anywhere. I have the doors locked. They can't open the doors. And so
That's a new new
Install
merch line.
install seatbelts in the couch.
Yeah, exactly. I've installed shackles for their wrists and their ankles.
Man, show rosary belts.
TM.
Strap your kid in.
But like, I guess my question is like, there are many times I feel like that we can let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and it's like either should we, even if we don't have the opportunity to pray the rosary together at night, candles, incense, all this other stuff, we shouldn't allow ourselves to not pray the rosary, even if it's in the car or doing other things. How do you guys feel about that?
I think so. One quick thought that comes to mind is I think for dudes, like a lot of men don't really come to a conscious experience of the world until like 25, 26, when they're holding their first child. And then shortly thereafter, they come to discover that they're sleep deprived, and then the consciousness gets really tenuous. And so like it's, we can talk about how life affords us the opportunity for potentially infinite growth. But the fact is, like, growth often comes in spurts. And the question is, like, what are you doing in between those spurts to create space for the growth that God gives? I think a lot of us think, like, there's just really one paradigm of growth. It's a matter of, going up the mountain. And there is going up the mountain in life. But I also think that a lot of life is also, like, kind of hollowing out space or creating a certain sensitivity and tenderness in our humanity to experience the Lord and to experience those whom God gives us. And I think that the best thing to secure that is just fidelity. Because by showing up for the things which God has revealed, which God has made known are good things, right? You expose yourself consistently, constantly to his offer of himself, to his offer of grace. And I think that when you do that, you're not necessarily going to register it physically, emotionally, psychologically, but you can trust that work is being done or God's working on you. And often enough, it's just that work of hollowing out, of removing obstacles, of creating a disposition of reception whereby you're ready to receive when he gives you those spurts of growth.
Sometimes a family rosary is just a family decade, and
Yeah.
that's great. Like, that's enough.
Yeah.
So people shouldn't be discouraged if you say, there's no way I can make this happen, carve out these 15 minutes for the rosary. But that might actually be true. So start small, and there's nothing wrong or difficult about that. But I like this point you made about praying in the car, because that was my mother's rule. I get a lot about the rosary from my mom because it was like that prayer. But whenever we were in the car for more than 30 minutes, which was frequent because Midwesterners, so whenever we were in the car for longer than half an hour, we prayed the rosary.
Yeah.
And I think it was how she got some peace.
Yeah,
It's a great
also,
practice.
It's also great for the parents. It's like,
Everybody
listen, you're not
wins.
talking anymore. Yeah.
I'm full send. Yeah, full endorsement on my part.
Yeah.
I also think there's something masculine about that. One of my friends from Virginia had mentioned this. He said men build relationships when they're doing like a third thing together. Like more often women build relationships if they want to get to know somebody, they want to get to know their friend. They're like, let's go get coffee. And they sit face to face with each other across the table, and they just sip their lattes and have a conversation, right? But the way that men build friendship is by doing something together. They go play golf together or something like that. So I don't think, don't underestimate the relationships that you're building, and maybe even particularly with your sons, by praying the rosary, which is an activity, an external that you're doing together, right? And whether that's driving and it's kind of revealing to your sons or to your family that in all of these aspects of life, and it could be something as mundane as just getting from point A to point B, we can still build this relationship both with each other as well as with God in all of these different facets. So I think there's something important about that, especially from a masculine perspective.
So what is it about the rosary? Because throughout history,
What is he up
with the rosary? But throughout
The
history,
thing about the rosary is that the rosary is a thing about which one can say many things.
this is God. What a distinction that was.
Thank you.
But like there have been times, the Battle of Lepanto. I mean, just many times where Our Lady's answer or her thing was pray the rosary. It wasn't go to daily mass, which obviously the mass is the best thing you can do. But what is it about the rosary? Why has that been the answer for the world's problems so many times? What is so special about it?
I think if you look at the rosary as just a set of 50 Hail Marys and 5 Our Fathers, it doesn't make any darn sense. Why would the Blessed Mother want you to pray a list of prayers, and check that off? Mm-hmm. But if you understand the rosary as we've talked about it, as it's actually meditating on the life of her Son and allowing yourself to grow deeper in union with him by contemplating the mysteries of his life and our salvation in relation to that, then it builds, it does change the world because it changes the hearts of the individuals that are associated with that. So I think when Our Lady does encourage us at different apparitions or different moments in history, because it's not just about do the thing, you'll get the result you want. This isn't an input-output experience, right? Well, the more rosaries I pray, the holier I become. That's if it's just a task-oriented understanding. But if it's truly about meditating, contemplating the mysteries of the Lord's life and our own salvation wrapped up into those mysteries, then why are we surprised when miracles happen then? Why are we surprised when hearts are converted? I would be surprised if they didn't.
Sure.
That would be the shocking thing.
Yeah.
One further weird thought. So sometimes we have it in our mind that to be a good Christian is to optimize or maximize your use of Christian things. So you fill out a spreadsheet with the various ways in which you can express your devotion or the various ways in which you can receive grace. And
you
then
do that too?
Yeah, exactly. So having
this is conditionally formatted. Don't worry.
having
Color
assigned
coordinated
them,
everything else, yeah.
having assigned them as you have assigned
Some
them.
people even go so far as to wear clothes.
Yeah, exactly.
Just to prove the point.
And you got your Excel macro, which optimizes for your life, and then the various practices, and then you're just all right, slot it in. But
Macros are where it's at.
Yeah, no, they always have been.
Gosh.
I never learned MATLAB, but I learned the macros. So the thing is, if you were to go about your life in such fashion, you might end up at daily mass 7 times a day, and then you'd think to yourself, why am I at daily mass 7 times a day? And then you'd think to yourself, what does it mean to be human? And what does it mean to be a good human? Because evidently, body, soul, there's a certain complexity here. Evidently, I need to, eat food and use the restroom and sleep for at least a couple of hours each night. And there are various concessions that I'm making to the flesh. But what if it weren't simply concessions? What if there was a way in which to bring the flesh into it? And so I think that there's a certain messiness to human life, not simply in the sense that it's fallen, but in the sense that it's got this complexity that's largely bound up in relationship and interaction, which leads us in this way and that way. And I think that just for a lot of folks, when you're building out your Christian life, you can look to the church for her indications as to what's most efficacious. And you want to spend time praying in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, and you want to make the Stations of the Cross, and you want to read the sacred scriptures, but the Rosary is set before us as something that you can recite, especially with other people, and gain a plenary indulgence every day.
I knew you were going to say indulgences. I
Because-
knew you were going to rattle them off.
Yeah, so indulgences, relics. All right, there are things that you got to harp on. Right, but the idea, I think, is that it's the gospel life scaled into a 16-minute prayer that you can pray as a family, and that you can strap your kids into their seats, and maybe feed them a little bit of Diamond
With the
Tap.
Catholic
you would
Man
never do
Show
that.
trademark prayer belt.
The purple
Exactly,
stuff, man.
TM. Yeah, and it's the type of thing which scales to human life. And I mean, if you're being honest, at certain points, you can't bring your whole family to daily mass. Or maybe you're in a situation where you can, and that's awesome. But, there are going to be times during which you can't, but you can almost always get your family to pray at least part of the rosary. So I think that's part of it.
Okay, so you guys have used, you said contemplation, contemplative prayer a lot. That's what we're made for in contemplation, right?
Yeah.
And I think St. Thomas talks about how your imagination is a power in which you can use for contemplation. is the relationship of a lack of being able to grow and nurture our imagination hurting us being able to pray the Rosary specifically, making it hard?
Yes. Next.
Good. I thought so.
I knew it.
I knew it. No, I very much so, because all of the ways that we get attached to our distractions inhibit the ability to form clear ideas in our mind. What happens with watching TV or movies, and I'm sure you've seen it even in yourselves, what happens when you're watching something as opposed to when you're reading a book is that there's no active work on your part. It's a passive activity. Watching television is a passive activity. Even going to the theater, which is way better than watching TV, even that is a passive activity because you're just receiving something being played out before you. But when you're reading, for example, or when you're having a conversation, it requires active powers of the imagination. You have to invest in, you paint the scene, you make it happen. And something of the same work is being done in the contemplation of the mysteries of the Rosary. And so without that legwork, we're letting those muscles atrophy. We're not doing the kind of prep work we need for them to be in shape for the Rosary and for sound contemplative and meditative prayer. One of the things that is happening more and more, as you guys all know, because it's happened to all of us sitting around here, is that you get the phantom cell phone ring. You think like, oh, did my phone vibrate?
Yeah.
And you reach and you check your phone. That's a way that we've all been conditioned by these shiny portals to hell that we walk around with in our pockets, and so we just are drawn to them constantly. And if we can't train ourselves to be detached from them, that will inhibit our ability to look to God and to ponder the saving mysteries.
So, with that in mind, I cannot pray the Rosary. Like, the scenes that I see in my head are straight out of the Passion of the Christ.
Nice.
Like, I have lost the ability to imagine anything else.
You just have that meme where Mel Gibson is sitting in the director's chair next to a really bloody
Jesus, trying to tell you
Jesus
how
in
your day is
proposal.
going.
Yeah. Right, yes. So it's like the agony in the garden, just like I see that hazy, dim lit Jesus, which is
right?
like actually really great because it's very vivid, and it's like a great scene, but like my imagination is like, nope, can't do better than that. That's where we're going, and that's where I go.
Yep.
So in some ways it's good, but in other ways.
But this allows me to clarify a little bit, because in the analogy, I might have led one to believe that I was using imagination or active contemplation in the sense that Ignatian meditation uses it, and I don't mean that. Okay. Where you place yourself in the Bible scene. Maybe if you've ever been on a youth group retreat, you've surely been forced to do this against your will. Now you're walking across the Sea of Galilee. Feel the water. And smell the salty air of the sea. It's like, no! Please don't make me very uncomfortable with you talking like that. So what I mean, what I'm really talking about are the principles, the ideas of saving truth that are being communicated. With the Annunciation, we should be thinking not of what color is the tile in Mary's kitchen that the angel kneels upon.
There's never tile.
If angels have
There's
knees.
never tile when
they
I
were
go.
poor.
Nice.
It was a dirt floor. They were poor.
See, you guys are doing it wrong.
She's sitting there sweeping the dirt floor.
It's really unfortunate. So it just gets dirty.
Little dustbusters.
Just but the thing to contemplate in the mystery of the Annunciation is the incarnation, that the Word became flesh. So we have to dig into the heart of it. The visitation, we might be thinking first of Elizabeth, this old for a pregnant lady, walking across the hills and sweating it out as she travels, or as Mary travels to visit Elizabeth. We might be thinking of the movement there, and what we ought to be thinking about is John the Baptist, who will herald this mystery of the Incarnation. Anyway, so to point to the saving truths and not the ancillary details necessarily. They can be helpful. Some people really like it, but they're not the thing.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think it's also something where, as Father Patrick said, like, we're human beings. We're not angels in this sense. And I think some of that is a real experience of learning your own humanity. You have to know yourself. There's like growth of self-knowledge. Like, I'm very similar to you. Like, I think back to the scenes from the Passion of the Christ when I'm praying the sorrowful mysteries. They're so vivid, and you gotta have to like break those down and work with those. But I'm very vivid in my prayer with Scripture. Like, so when I'm praying Scripture, I can see a lot of that. It's very vivid for me, and I can kind of create the scenes and start to see the nuances or whatever it may be.
It was a sunny day on the
Yeah.
Sea of Galilee.
You can smell the fish. They smell awful. But like my mother doesn't, and this is like why my mother loved the Passion of the Christ. She loves The Chosen because that has helped her prayer, because she really struggles with her imagination. So having something like that. So I think part of this experience is also learning your own self, like learning how you pray. You know, do you pray very vividly, just naturally, or sometimes do you need somebody to help assist that? And are there ways to do that? So I think it's a little bit of an aspect of just not necessarily like criticizing or poo-pooing one or the other, but just saying like, okay, this is how I pray best. You know, I can be very imaginative. It's very natural for me, and it's easy. Or I may actually need to do a little more work on that to contemplate that. What Father Patrick was saying is, once again, that kind of key thread that isn't just about the visuals of it all. It's not about just building a fantasy world in our heads of this, but it is actually forcing ourselves to kind of go deeper into the realities that are happening, because that's what these mysteries are about, the realities that did happen in this world. God took flesh in space and time. Which one's larger? Don't know. But he took flesh in this one.
Pope
right?
Francis does.
Yeah. But
He just won't tell us.
It's about forcing ourselves to go to that reality. So sometimes we need the visuals to help us, but if we're stopping at the visuals, then we're missing the point. We have to go to the realities of the mysteries.
Yeah.
Feel the stones under your feet.
Okay, so Luminous Mysteries, for or against?
For.
My view has been changed on this recently
Okay.
because of the person sitting next to me who's about to geek out about why.
All right,
Love
let's
it.
hear it.
I was kind of ambivalent on them, and so the church says it's okay, so whatever. And then I started learning a lot about Bartolo Longo, and I've become very devoted to them, and I think they're a beautiful meditation.
Was he the one who originally put them forward?
I don't know if do we have enough time?
And
on
you
this
just you
sucker?
told me
Yeah,
before we began, you're going to his canonization soon.
Welcome
working
to
that
the
out.
new episode
on
of the Catholic
Bartolo
Show
Longo.
on Bartolo Longo.
The Satanist who became a Catholic. So Bartolo,
I did not realize it was
understood
him
this.
that had put them forward.
Bartolo understood how catechetical the Rosary could be. Drawing from St. Dominic, he himself was a member of the Third Order of St. Dominic, very much influenced. His conversion was facilitated by Dominicans in Naples. He goes to Pompeii and sees how poorly educated in the faith the citizens of Pompeii are. His way to catechize the faithful, help them learn their faith, is to help them start to pray the Rosary. So very, very much in line with St. Dominic, he helps to catechize through the praying of the Rosary. In doing so, he realizes there's a little bit of a gap in the Gospels that are not necessarily represented in the Rosary. Fully aware of the beautiful meaning of the Our Lady Psalter with the 150 Psalms and the 150 Hail Marys, he's not rejecting any of that, but he begins to supplement with these mysteries of the Lord's apostolic life, and as a way to give the fullness of a catechetical approach to the citizens of Pompeii. And so he starts to promote these kind of devotional meditations that are attached to decades of the Rosary in that way. Years go by, they become very kind of popular in that region of Italy. St. John Paul II picks up on this when he writes his letter on the Rosary and encourages the faithful to do it. So you see it's John Paul II rooted in Bartolo Longo. That's a really postcard version. I look at both Bartolo and John Paul II, and I think that the Luminous Mysteries may be one of the greatest prophetic moments of those two men. And if you look at the Luminous Mysteries, that they were preparing for, I think, our present day culture and society, in trying to entrust it to Our Lady's care, to hand over to our Lord to address these struggles in our life. And if you look at, beginning with the baptism of the Lord, we see such a fall in the baptismal rates. People are not baptizing their children anymore. We're seeing a huge uptick in adult baptisms because that never happened when they were kids. Thousands were baptized in Paris this year. Most of them were adults because they were not baptized as children.
Wow.
Right, so you see that as an effect in the wedding feast of Cana, the attacks on marriage, the corruption or the misunderstanding of what marriage is as a sacrament has destroyed our society, right? And then you have the preaching of the kingdom, the loss of a moral compass, and living from both grace and virtue in our life, in orienting ourselves to seek first the kingdom of God, and the great ills that has had across our society. You have the transfiguration. How many people have lost concept that Jesus is God? They think he's just a good man. He's just a moral teacher, right? So he's helping us to reestablish this understanding that Jesus is truly divine, fully God, fully man. And then you have the institution of the Eucharist, which was, we've seen so many people, even mass-going Catholics who sit in the pews, do not believe that the Eucharist is Jesus. This is what inspired the bishops of our own nation to encourage this Eucharistic revival and the Eucharistic Congress, is to help us recenter ourselves on the true presence of Jesus. So when you look at the Luminous Mysteries, it's like these are wildly important for our present day context. And so I am very pro Luminous at this point.
So are those your favorite mysteries?
Wow. They may be my favorites. I think the mysteries that are the easiest for me to pray with are the sorrowful.
Do you ever do a mix and match?
Like a mixed six-pack at Trader Joe's?
Exactly.
When you go,
That you should. Speaking of merch, you could sell like a wheel and you like spin it for like the mystery of the rosary.
We're letting the Holy Spirit decide which one.
That could shake up family rosary if you had like a wheel.
Oh my gosh!
I'm not kidding.
Five different wheels.
Like a tiny wheel.
Right. You want to get kids involved, like excited about praying the rosary, like have them take turns about who gets to spin the wheel. I mean, like.
Put all the different mysteries in a hat.
And
draw one out.
It's like, what's it gonna be?
I was recently hiking in the Adirondacks with my friends, and one of whom is named Bobby. And
No
we
kidding.
it's wild.
That's amazing.
But we were near the top of a mountain called Mount Blake, and
Balake.
there was
Balake.
exactly Mount Balake, and there was a thunderstorm, and so we were doing our counting. It's like you see it, and then you count to 8. And you're like, we're basically decent. And as we were getting towards the exposed alpine zone, it was like, there's lightning. Oh, and there's thunder. So it was like, let's hunker down here, pray for a little bit, hope that it passes, summit, bop to the next one, and then head back. But if this just keeps coming thicker and faster, then we're going to turn around and go home. And so he's like, all right, yeah, great. I was like, let's say a couple decades. And so we started, I think, on like the 4th sorrowful mystery. But the lightning storm continued for quite a few minutes. So we went 4th, 5th, and then 1st, 2nd, 3rd, sorrowful. We rounded out the scoring.
Sure.
Then it came time to pray a little bit more. He looked at me and goes, should we start in the 4th glorious? And
Why not?
So it felt kind of mixed baggy or mixed packy. So yeah. If you're looking for ideas, I think Mount Blake might be a source of inspiration.
The Balake Rosary.
Yeah.
No, I dig it. I dig it.
Okay, so we're gonna have people ask questions, but before we do, I have one more that I want to make. I actually have a lot more, but I'll just stick to one.
Yeah.
One of the last roadblocks that you have converts coming into the Catholic faith is our Blessed Mother. And so my question is, like, are we putting too much emphasis on our Blessed Mother? What does it mean to be the Mediatrix of Grace? What is the why did God see this fitting to do so?
I don't want to say that I know these people better than they know themselves, because that's condescending. But I do think that what you often encounter is people concerned with secondary and tertiary doctrines, because they realize at the level of primary doctrines that Catholicism is the fullness of the faith, but they're afraid of that because they realize they will have to change their life. And it's not just a matter of sexual morality, but I think a lot of that is the case. It's also like your whole world changes, like all your friends change.
Yeah, you're gonna maybe lose.
You're gonna lose
all your friends.
Possibly your
you might
job,
lose all
your friends. Like, I mean,
it
plus
could be
statues.
Plus adding.
Yeah, and you're not going to be able to dress as well,
relics.
and you're not going to be able to like raise your hands at church as much, and it's going to be brutal, So I was recently at a premiere of a documentary about like the revival that's been sweeping the South, especially amongst like evangelicals at college campuses. And it was cool just to like be with a bunch of awesome Protestants, like really good people. And I was thinking like, I want you guys all to become Catholic. But I suspect that if a couple of you started becoming Catholic, that it would cause tension in this environment. Because it was like 750 evangelicals who all knew each other. And then they're like, who's this guy? And I was like,
Who's the weirdo?
exactly. So no, I don't think that you accommodate the faith in a way like by debasing it will make it easier for them to enter in. It's like turn it up to 11.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, what people want is the real deal, but we have to be able to help them in acknowledging the genuine roadblocks, like the real obstacles, which are the obstacles posed by our own sinfulness and viciousness. But like, hey, I don't say that in judgment. I say in terms of like, let's facilitate, let's make it possible.
I totally agree. My strategy is always to redirect to something that's crazier, like that God made the world out of nothing, or that he loves us.
Yeah, or like relics. Those are totally weird.
It's like you're worried that we think that this one woman doesn't have any sin, and you think God loves you? Like, I've got way more problems with that one. Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Like, why would an all-powerful, all-knowing thing care about me? That's like a way. Like, you're cool with that, but you're worried about the Virgin Mary, or that you think that the world was made by him. Like, why should there be something rather than nothing? What do you have to say about that? I think that's a much bigger problem. There should be nothing, man, but there's something.
That's Saint Ambrose's argumentative strategy when it comes to the Eucharist. People are like, yeah, it can't possibly be the case.
You mean you think that the God who made this can't change it?
Well, his thing is like, oh, but you believe that the only begotten Son of God took flesh in the womb of a virgin? So he just goes back to the next most principled thing. People are like, hey, decent point, but it's still weird. It's okay. Oh, yeah, fine. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, relics.
For our next episode of the Catholic Man
I
Show,
love
we're talking
relics.
about relics.
But I do imagine, like,
on the ship, on the Sea of Galilee, flutter in the wind.
Feel the wind rustling through your hair.
Okay, let's take some questions.
Sure.
What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm a convert into the faith. A couple of things that you said really spoke to me. As far as the Rosary, it was, and Blessed Mother was very much an obstacle to me. But I actually understood very early on that the Church's teachings, even if I didn't understand them, were true. Mm-hmm. So that was how I started my Rosary journey. Just got on my knees and started praying. I don't understand it. I'm not sure if I accept it, but I'm going to start doing it. And as I was going through the Rosary and actually the encounters of the Blessed Mother, really the gifts it's given me are incredible. So I applaud you for your efforts to continue to share it. For myself, a couple things. I often do walking rosaries. Now in some of the different places where I work, the walking paths, we have a homeless problem. So I do sometimes feel like the parable of the Good Samaritan as I see the homeless and I'm praying the rosary and it's out loud and I'm praying for them as an intention as I'm coming upon them. But I don't have the wherewithal to actually help them as they're lying in their sorrow and in their disorder. And I do feel sometimes as a hypocrite as I'm walking and I'm not doing the physical act rather than praying for them. And I know the efficacy of the prayer, but I still don't know how to reconcile maybe some of those things as I'm walking through. And maybe I'm just offering that up to this group maybe for some wisdom of whether or not how to reconcile those things for myself.
Yeah, well, there's really two schools of thought.
Yeah, thank God for good old Catholic guilt.
You should feel guilty. I would say, what other corporal works of mercy are you doing?
Well, certainly I'm participating quite heavily in the parish and helping out wherever I can.
You don't have to quiz him on the show.
How about this?
How much money?
How
have you made?
What's the most embarrassing thing you've ever said in confession?
I meant that as a rhetorical question and you took it, so sorry. I didn't actually mean that. There was too much of a pause after I said it. My bad. But I would say if we're involved in the corporal works of mercy in a regular rhythm or habit in our life, then both that will help us to actually work with the poor, the hungry, the disadvantaged in that way, and we'll maybe feel more comfortable in encountering them when our lives do, or our paths do cross with them. But also it gives us the freedom to say, okay, yeah, I also know that I'm serving at the soup kitchen. Maybe I've seen that person at the soup kitchen, or maybe I haven't. Now I know where the resources are to actually better help them when I do encounter them. I think sometimes when we're not actually engaged in other corporal works of mercy, then we're confronted with an opportunity to do that, and we freeze, and then we don't, and then we walk away very saddened. And that response of sadness is an authentic and a real one. So that might be something for you to think about, is like, okay, maybe I do need to increase my corporal works of mercy, and in an intentional way, and not just kind of waiting for the opportunities to arise. Because the more I kind of intentionally cultivate those corporal works of mercy in my life, when the opportunities do arise, I will be better suited and better able and ready to respond when those situations do come.
That's excellent. So I do have a second one. It's a little more on a theological, and I'm looking for some wisdom. This is something that occurred to me as I was praying the rosaries. It does seem.
He points the camera to Father Gregory. Right.
So as I'm praying the rosary, it feels like it's the spiritual climbing of a mountain. You know, the preamble, you know, the Our Father and the three preparatory Hail Marys as a preparatory for climbing the mountain of the rosary. And as I climb that spiritual rosary every time, it does seem that there's a crescendo in each of in the third mysteries of each specific one. Now, I haven't read that somewhere. That's just something that occurs to me every time that I do the rosary, that in that third there's this crescendo moment, and then almost as in the Transfiguration, it's not resting at the crescendo, it's now coming down the mountain to share that profundity, or whatever that revelation is. That something that's actually taught within the rosary, or am I just way off in left field?
I wouldn't say you're off in left field. So the mysteries of the rosary are just the mysteries of the life of Christ, arranged in pedagogical or mystagogical fashion. And the teaching regarding...
Which means what?
It means that they're the types of things which can lead you gradually into the fullness of the truth. So they, in their recitation, they communicate to you in a way that's comprehensible, and increasingly so. So like the Lord arranges his life such that you can follow him through it without being overwhelmed at any stage. But the Lord arranges his life in such a way that it culminates in what we call the Paschal Mystery. So in his passion, death, resurrection, some would include the ascension. But that there's a kind of grace concentrated at the end of his life. And so all of the Lord's, all of the mysteries of his life save, which is the reason for which I'm pro Luminous Mysteries, because it communicates that with a kind of beauty or clarity. Namely, that whenever you refer to the Lord, or whenever you kind of advert to the Lord throughout the course of the gospel, throughout the course of his life, you know that what he's doing there is saving. But what you observe is a kind of crescendo over the course of his life to the Paschal Mystery, and he intends everything that comes before with respect or with reference to what comes after, with what comes there in the final days of his life and the first days of his resurrected life. And so I think that there is a sense in which we can observe a kind of movement towards the Paschal Mystery at various points in his life. So like, for instance, the only story that we have beyond his infancy and before his public life is the story during which he's lost to his parents for those 3 days at the age of 12. And that's already preparing us for his time in the tomb, you know, like, where have you laid him? You know, where is he gone off to? And so I think that the whole point of the rosary is to lead us from or through the Lord's life, kind of crescendoing to his Paschal Mystery, because it's in that gesture, in that act, that the Lord concentrates salvation. But everything that comes before, everything that comes after, is with an eye to that, and is in certain service, or is in a certain service of that.
All right, I'm good. I'm gonna go sit down now.
There you go.
No, but seriously, how much money did you give them?
And was it 10%?
It is a precept of the church to support the temporal activities of the church. So tithing is a precept of the church.
That's another thing that I like to talk about, the precepts.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
boy.
that's coming from the one who does development and fundraising work. Anyway, moving on.
I had a question about the imagination, since you were talking about it earlier. I teach high school, and I wondered if you guys had any tips on running a part-time rehab.
You mean like imaginative rehab?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think having to write things, having to come up with stories and to tell stories, to begin conversations, is really excellent. One of the things that I like about Carlo Acutis was that he made one of the things that I like about Carlo Acutis was that he made videos with his cats and dog, and that just made these little movies and things. And I think it's so charming because many of us did that with the home VHS camera, and that was like a great masterpiece work of art, right? To pull off a 6 or 7 minute video that had a little plot and a little story to it in the good old 90s. And kids don't do that anymore. So to get them to come up with little stories or to produce a little video, something that is a skit, that has more profound meaning than the kinds of skits they do on TikTok or Instagram, is very rich. So if I were teaching and looking to burn time in a classroom, that's what I would be doing, because I think it would be good for them.
Not so dissimilar to what you say, but I think making sure that they're reading fiction. A lot of what they see, they're watching so many videos, TikTok videos, everything's so visual now, that the brain and the synapses are not trained, the imagination's not trained to create anymore. And fiction does that. So it helps to actually rewire the brain and give it a reality to create appropriate fantasy. Especially with men younger are being exposed to pornography, and that destroys the brain's ability to create appropriate real fantasy and create another world. So fiction gives you the opportunity to do that. So encouraging them to read a chapter of fiction every single night, just something as small as that, just one chapter, but something that is not a work of fiction that has been made into a movie. So not a work that they've already seen the movie of, but like something that is of itself, right? You can use The Lord of the Rings, though, because there's just so much in the books that aren't in the movies that they'll have to work through. But I think...
Don't even get me started on Rings of Power.
Yeah, exactly.
What a disaster.
I think maybe something else that was similar to what you were saying, though, as a teacher, is maybe carve out 15, 30 minutes a week and force them actually to do kind of like improv. Like give them ordinary things and tell them to create a story from the ordinary.
Thanks, Michael Scott.
Yeah. But I think that's important, is because if you start to give them things that they see on an everyday life, but they're having to force a new story from what they're typically used to encountering, it helps them to be creative. It helps them to work their imagination, helps them to see something that they see every day from a different perspective that they're not used to. So I think some of those things, like you said, trying to be creative, writing, creating in new ways, instead of just being a spectator in every aspect of their life. I want to stop there.
All right.
Hear the sound of the waves on the side of the boat.
We recorded an episode about digital addiction, and Father Joseph Anthony, drawing on the commentary of one, Dana Joy's brother, was talking about how like a culture kind of slides from art to entertainment to distraction to addiction. And I think that we observe that cross-culturally. And so I think that, like a lot of our lives have become workaday, entertainment, distraction, addiction. And to introduce another distinction or another paradigm, I think we need to move out of the workaday and into the leisurely. And that means that we're doing things which, while ordered to an end, like they have a kind of purpose and built, aren't necessarily useful. Like you can acknowledge the fact at the outset that you're never going to be a great musician because you got feet for hands or because you just can't. But it's still worthwhile to learn the mandolin, as a kind of teleologically oriented exercise in leisurely pursuits. And so I think that one of the things that this generation really needs to hear is that it's worthwhile to take risks and that it's a safe space to fail and that you should be about, a kind of artful, delightful, leisurely business because it's broadly speaking humanizing. But you just need to be able to create space for that. Otherwise, we just kind of go back to our workaday instincts and entertain and distract and grow addicted.
Yeah.
Father Gregory, did I ever tell you I tried to learn the piano by ear?
No.
I got a lot better when I started using my hands.
Nice. I've never known you for a dad joker.
I was going to say, that was a dad joke.
Well, I was going to say the other thing as well is I think the generation needs to also learn that everything doesn't have to be useful.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the big things that often, even when we're having any discussion about, I teach history, there's this just fixation on utilitarianism.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you. Yeah, great question. Juan Posada, everyone.
Juan, in Spanish first, please.
Jens, Latin. How about Latin?
It is, pues.
So as we're talking about praying the rosary, my question is actually about not praying the rosary.
Yeah.
Great question.
Like, I went through a long phase where if I had the time to prayer, I kept going back to Scripture. And you hear that what ignorance of Scriptures is ignorance of Christ. I came up with that.
Nice.
Dude, you should write that down. You should definitely write that down.
Write that down. Put that on T-shirts and tote bags. Let's go.
Everyone knows John Paul II said that.
No.
But for a long time, I would just, if I had a time, I would sit down, open Scripture, go through the Psalms. Then I was like, look, it's been like 3 weeks and I didn't pray a rosary. Then I go look past, like, it's been like 2 months since I prayed my last rosary. Right? And there was this like weird guilt. Like, I have the chain in my ankle, right? I must be a hypocrite because I'm not praying the rosary and doing this and doing that. So then I look kind of like negotiate myself into like, maybe I'll just pray like once a month and that will like cover my debt to wearing the chain of enthronement to Our Lady or something like that. But just grasping with that concept of saying like, well,
Dude, I love this.
Where is this balance?
Your tortured Latin soul.
Yes.
You don't
Mucho,
have scrupulosity at all, do you?
No, never struggle with that.
How much money did you give to the church?
Not as much as Bryce.
Do you have a tattoo of Our Lady of Guadalupe?
It's a full back piece.
That's it.
So Father Gregory has lots to say on this point. He likes to address it, but I want to set the table or make the first response one by simply saying, sometimes when it comes to devotions, we move through seasons with them, where one of these ways of prayer, which are endorsed by the church, which are all plenary indulgences. Father Gregory's getting very excited. He'll rattle them all off and tell you all about them. But we move through these different seasons of life where one way of prayer is more effective or impactful for us than another, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, the Virgin Mary has 15 promises for those who pray her rosary, but
I mean, if you don't need
I'm
those,
just saying, if you don't need those, but maybe not everybody does. But
I mean, if you love Jesus, then you would definitely pray it. But
You would love his mother. If you love Jesus and the Jesus you find in the Gospels and the Scriptures, you would love his mother in the Rosary. But that's fine.
But Jenny, very seriously, sometimes in a
Yeah.
particular season of life, we're drawn to a particular method of prayer, and as we move through life, the method of prayer changes. And it's nothing to worry about.
we can't all be part of the elect. So
I love how we alternate between
you
like
get your own
earnest
planet,
answers
too?
and like devastating commentary. It's tremendous.
There's only so many, 140,000.
Yeah, exactly. 44. Okay, so wait for it. Steady. There are things in life that are optional, and you're fine.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Thank you.
I'd say that when we leave things up to our own spontaneous responses, we often do them less frequently than we want to. Like if we told ourselves, I'm just going to pray whenever I feel like it, you'll like kind of never pray. So there was a case study done with like creative writing students.
Ooh, science.
And neuroscience. And like the first group, the test case was told, write when you have an inspiration. And then the next group was told, write every day for an hour. And the next group was told, write every day for 2 hours. And as you might expect, so like these folks had, by the end of the week, 1,500 words worth of usable prose. These folks had like 3,000 words worth of usable prose, and these people had like 5,000 words worth of usable prose. So there is a sense in which, you drive your body and you train it for fear that after having preached to others, you yourself might be disqualified. So there has to be
should write
some.
that down.
I should. I should write a letter to the Corinthians.
Don't worry, if
Corinthians.
we put monkeys in a room with typewriters, they'll come up with
Yeah,
that
exactly.
too. Yeah, we just
So I
have to
think it's
label,
like,
you know?
in your conversation with the Lord, set for yourself a standard. And maybe that's like, I'll pray a rosary every month. That's fine. Like just set for yourself a standard and then keep yourself accountable.
Okay. Thank you.
Boom.
Prayer's a habit.
Prayer's a habit.
Yeah, it's true.
White dress.
Yeah, so this actually follows right up on his question, which is, could you talk a little bit more about the connection between the Rosary and the Psalms? And especially I was thinking about Aquinas' threefold division of the Psalms, about penance, let's say it was penance, and then glory. Anyway, but now that I'm on the spot, I'm forgetting. But he divides them in three ways that penance, justice, and glory, right? And how those might map onto the three traditional groups of the mysteries. Any thoughts?
No. We could do the historical. So, like, Father Patrick made reference to the fact that, Father Joseph Anthony made a reference to the fact that we refer to the Rosary as the Psalter of Our Lady. So the Rosary develops through Carthusian, Cistercian, and Dominican practices, largely speaking, from like the 12th to the 15th century. And the idea was that ordinarily in monastic life, you pray all 150 Psalms over the course of a week. Certain groups move to every 2 weeks. The Universal Church at this stage of the game and the Roman Rite does every 4 weeks. But that certain
Except
persons...
for 3, which they took out.
Except for the ones that they took out, yeah.
Okay.
But the idea is that those who could not read Latin or could not chant adequately in choir would participate in the work of God, the Opus Dei, which pertains to what transpires within that chapel. And so that they would do so by reciting prayers and tolling beads. So it started with Our Fathers, and then it became Hail Marys, or the first half of the Hail Mary, and then the second half of the first half was appended, and then the second half was appended.
What about the second part of the second part?
Nice, yeah. I did notice
see what you did there.
the close congruence there between my descriptions and St. Thomas's divisions. It's almost like we're friends. The idea there is that the Rosary has always been understood as a participation in the recitation of the Psalter, and that dates to an early part of the life. That dates to an early church intuition, which is that the Psalms speak of Christ. So like this was, it was a condemned position in the 6th century to say that the Psalms don't speak of Christ. So what you have in the background is a typological reading of Scripture with its literal and then its allegorical, moral, and anagogical senses, all of which conduce to a kind of understanding of salvation history wherein we're meant to look for Christ all along the way, and that the Psalter forms for us the kind of prayer book whereby to do so. So I think that the Rosary is just a kind of simplified form or a more accessible form whereby to gain access to the same realities. So that's an initial thought.
I loved how he said, no. And then he went on to...
No. St. Thomas didn't finish his commentary on the Psalms. He came up short in like the mid-50s. I haven't read it. Also, it's the type of thing where it's
French. It's one of the giant
the one
hardback
translated volume is in
series.
French, and it's like, you could slog through Latin, or you could slog through French, or you could just wait until you die, and then just see it in the Word.
I thought you were going to say you could wait and then ask ChatGPT what it says.
Oh no, just die. Yeah,
Nah.
Just die. Yeah.
Way better.
Way better.
infinitely so.
Soon the chat's gonna get us anyway.
Yeah.
It is.
So first, I have to address that there's a lot of shade thrown at Oklahoma City at the start of this episode. I just want to share that I am wearing my Blessed Stanley Rother socks,
nice.
which also happen to be in Thunder colors.
Wow.
I'm sure that's not a coincidence.
Sure. Not a coincidence.
Probably Joseph Anthony. There's the shrine you visited. Right
Love
there.
it. Big
That's
fans.
pretty epic, actually.
Stan the man.
That's
Go
love it. Absolutely.
Pacers.
Love him.
So I don't really have a question as much as a prompt to maybe get you guys to just talk a little bit. You mentioned Bartolo Longo was a third order Dominican. You mentioned Opus Dei. My friend here is a third order Dominican. I'm a member of the third class of the Order of Malta. What I'm wondering is what you guys think about third orders. Like, what would you say to the audience? Would you encourage that? Would you discourage that? Why should someone be part of a third order?
I think the most important thing that we can do is reclaim regular social gatherings in our society, because people are so alone. Like it used to be a couple decades ago that you would go to the Knights of Columbus Hall and drain a couple beers and then go home to the wife, right? Or whatever it was the guys were doing, Odd Fellows, Veterans of Foreign Wars, like there were men's clubs, and women had all of their regular places to gather. And those things have just vanished. They've been decimated for all kinds of reasons, and some of them are probably good, but many of them are bad. And we're deeply feeling that sense of isolation and alienation. And I think it's good to be committed to something that draws you outside of yourself and that binds you to a group of people. So yeah, people didn't, now people aren't really interested in secret induction ceremonies. That's great. Don't join the Masons. That's always been bad. But I do think, yeah, I mean, the myth of the modern Italian nation state. Anyway, I think that it's very important to reclaim what these groups can do for the church. I think that joining them, though, is subject to the same risks as all of these societies were, meaning they're only as good as your experience in the local chapter. So sometimes the local chapter is going to be a bit dysfunctional, and sometimes it's great. And it's wrong to generalize, and we have to be just attentive to the particular experiences and realistic about what they mean.
I've come across this quite often because I now oversee the confraternities of the Holy Rosary in the province of St. Joseph. And most people have forgotten about the confraternity and say, what is a confraternity? How does this operate? And the fact is they're about 500 years old, and some of them are even older than 500 years old. But they kind of frozen in that 500 year, like they were frozen in their iteration 500 years ago. And we're very different people with different needs. And I think a lot of these kind of ancient associations of the faithful, whether they're third orders or other kind of Catholic adjacent organizations or things like that, have been frozen in a certain time frame, and they're less attractive or applicable to our people today. So I think it does demand for us to understand, okay, what is the good here of gathering people together around a certain kind of relationship to a religious charism, right? So the Dominican charism, the Carmelites, or the Franciscans. Okay, so what does that mean now? What do those bonds look like? Catherine of Siena was technically in the third order of St. Dominic. She was wearing a habit and running around the streets of Rome and taking care of sick people and yelling at popes and all these different things. Is that what we need out of the third order today? Well, some would claim yes, others, but I think it is thinking realistically that they have really much fallen into the shadows again, and I don't think it would be a bad thing to pull them back out of those shadows into the spotlights. But we can't just cut and paste of what happened in generations before us. We have to kind of really intentionally rethink and see what is this union of this association with a religious charism or within the church or other things, and then pursue the good that it offers in that way. But it's going to take a lot of work, to be very honest. It's going to take a lot of work. Some are doing it better than others. I really appreciate what Father Patrick said, is that our experience of it in these types of organizations, our experience of it is extremely dependent on the local chapter. And some of those are thriving, some of those are hurting, and to recognize that.
Amen. Sweet. You guys have a much better podcast than what we have. Why don't you guys tell them about how they can check that out and what we could where they can find everything, and if there's other young guys who are discerning the priesthood or the religious life, what they can do.
Well, I would say because we're men like you guys, we have a podcast. It's just the rules. Men
in their 30s.
We're men in their 30s. We have to have one.
Good, I'm still in my 30s.
Yeah. Sorry, Davey.
Anyways, so friends, if you haven't, check us out over at Godsplaining. You can find us at godsplaining.org across YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, etc. We do all the things. We do live events on the reg. You can visit our website and get information about those. And we especially like it when you hit the follow and subscribe buttons when you follow us on those channels.
Ring the bell so you can get
Ding,
the
ding, ding.
notifications on all of our new posts and episodes and things
But
like
one
that.
thing is certain: we will never do a day of recollection in Oklahoma City.
I wouldn't say that. I like that city.
Awesome. Well, hey guys, thanks so much for being with us. It's been a lot of fun. Looking forward to tomorrow. Thanks for being here.
Thank you guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.